Hello, everyone. Welcome to Monday Night Roundup here on Blood Bowl Live. Here to go through the last week of the A&DBBL Season 7. As always, we've got 11 games to go through today. The only thing that we'll be missing from today is Scott's Corner, because Scott is away with work, but I'm sure he'll be jumping on the chat shortly. So my theory is both me, him, and Tom lost this week, and therefore he thought I'll sit and be quiet and mock in the chat, and then me and Tom will take the brunt of it. So we'll just all bear that in mind as we get to the games. But no Scott, but joining us, Tom, as always, here to join us for the roundup, and joining us yet again, Dave Rue, making us all look remarkably unprofessional. So thank you to the pair of you for being here today. We will dive straight in. But before we do, just to give an update, this time last week, I said that I would shave my head if we got to £300. As you can see, we didn't reach it and I didn't do it. No, obviously, it all went within a matter of days. And the total is currently sat at £391, which is incredible. So anyone who's donated, thank you so much. I know this is a cause that means a lot to a lot of people. So huge thank you to everyone who has donated. If you haven't and you want to, you can go to justgiving.com/pages/A&DBBL Season 7. And if you want to do something as well to raise some money, it's always welcome. So dive straight in. Anyway, that's that out of the way. Let's go straight in to the first game of the week. And the first game that we had this last week was the Buffalo Biggins versus the Flamingos, Orcs versus Goblins here. And I think definitely me and Tom and Scott, I think at some point in the week we messaged each other to question whether this season we had jinxed Harrison, because last season I made a conscious effort to say nothing about him, and we got him to third place. And this season I decided to ignore that and root for Harrison. And the season hasn't got off to the best start. But Goblins have got off to a very good start, and all the stunty teams seemed a lot of stunty results coming in that are very, very good. And they're definitely a bit of a force this season. Dave, you've played both of these guys. I don't think you could look at this particular fixture and say it's easily going to go one way or another, but those Goblins are just so kind of unpredictable that they're so difficult to kind of defend against.
Yeah, no, definitely. Just looking at what we've got here, so it looked like it was the second half, turn 15. So it looks like it was a long, drawn-out affair with a lot of to and fro between the players. Obviously, Harrison lost a Black Orc blocker, which is going to affect him. But then against the Goblins, it's probably just the shenanigans that you normally get with Scott. It's just madness, isn't it? It's like a box of frogs, really. So it looks like it was a real hard fought battle. But obviously Scott has I don't know, maybe we need to do a drugs test on him or something like that, or see what's happened and what's different for this season. But he really does seem to be getting the results under his belt at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just noticed in chat that he's on chat and in Twitch. So hi Scott. And apparently he says that tour play looks dull. There was 10 Orc knockouts over the course of the game, so it was quite a full-on match by the sounds of things.
I think that when I was looking at the at tour play, while there's not a huge amount on there, the fact that I think all of the secret weapons got sent off on turn 15. So he's kept all of those weapons in the game, either possibly benching some for the first half, but kept them all in the game for the entire game. Really impressive. Bribe-wise, it looks like he had only 2 bribes. So whether he used them both up in the first half but only played 2 secret weapons, it'd be interesting to know what weapon setup he went for, because I know that when I've played Scott before, he's kept 2 on the bench, had 2 on the pitch, and he's kind of then been able to rotate them and always have that presence on the field.
Yeah, he took a few star players as well to help him out with this one, the classic ones. But I love the all goblin vibe to it. So he does deserve a few results along the way, but hopefully not tomorrow.
Yeah, Dave, this is your group. So do you are you I mean, in the group, we'll look at the table later, but Scott's kind of running away a bit at the front. Were you kind of hoping this would, do you just want them all to draw against each other to make your life a bit easier?
Yeah, basically. And if they can get a few casualties along the way, that'd be perfect. I think the thing is with mine and Harrison teams, they're redrafted. So Scott is going to get quite a few inducements along the way, which means he's going to take the star players, which you will then see secret weapons lasting a little bit longer, and all the bribes as well. But it'd be interesting to see how he plays tomorrow. It'd be nice to meet him as well. I haven't seen him for a while, so it'd be good to get another game in with him. So looking forward to it, definitely.
Tom, you have been an Orc coach in a previous season. Harrison, not having the best of results early on. We'll look at his second game next, which Dave was against yourself, another 1-0 loss for Harrison. The Orc team I always think they're quite interesting because there's armor 10 across the board. Edge 3 in most places, and I think you assume that they're worse, but actually they've got the same agility as most humans. He's been very kind of particular about the skills. Not many randoms there, a lot of chosen skills. 2 losses is nothing, can comfortably turn it around, right?
Oh, absolutely. And equally, this match was in a blizzard, so there was no go for it, so I assume, or people weren't risking going for it. So it's one of those things, and they're not really a passing team either. But I'm surprised of the amount of knockouts that the Goblins got on the Orcs. So clearly, the dice were hot for the Goblins, which was a bonus. So it looked like it was potentially a fun game, and unfortunately, like most things with Tor play, doesn't show half the story really.
Yeah, we do. We want knockouts on Tor play because I think it does give a bigger picture.
Yeah.
So we'll push that for them. But Harrison's next game against you, Dave. What happened in this one?
Well, it was a good game. It was a really enjoyable game. So I received the kick to start with, and is this one where I lost the mummy early doors? No, it's not. So I received the kick early, and we were just hammering at each other. I was keeping the ball caged up, trying to reduce his numbers. His guard didn't seem to be pushed up to the lines, so I kept asking where the guard was, and they seemed to be off the line a little bit. But then I was able to get a few knockouts. I created a gap, started to go through. He crowded my cage, and it was set up perfectly for a dodge out, which I failed. So then Harrison picked up the ball, and we just saw the half out crowding each other out. So second half, I was already happy to take the draw, kicking to him. So I knew I'd have to get the ball off him. And he failed to pick up, and I was able to create a gap within the line. And I thought, this is the time that I'm going to try and crowd his pickup. So I pushed a lot of players through. He was able to squeeze round, and then I think I burnt 2 re-rolls on a turn so that I could get 2 dice with the strip baller on his ball carrier at the time, and got the power, and was then able to pick the ball up from that, and was able to sort of actually it landed on a skeleton, so I was quite lucky. I didn't have to roll for the pickup. I got it for free on a 6, and then was able to sort of just case the skeleton in for the 1-0. So it was a very tight game, and afterwards I was talking to him about whether I would have pushed to try and crowd his pickup if it wasn't a case for he kind of left one guy on his own, and I could see he was looking at that. And I don't know if he was thinking of backing this lad up, but he was in a tackle zone with a mummy, and off the back of that, I was able to create the gap to then push through. So I don't know if he'd see it as a sort of mistake, but it was a really hard fought match, and I think the fact that I pushed on and didn't give him time to pick up the ball disrupted a lot of his play. He didn't get his normal rhythm and his normal sort of offensive play on there. So I feel it was a bit of a lucky win for me, to be honest with you. We broke each other's turn, and I think I was the lucky one that come away with a 1-0 win on that one.
I guess looking at the weather was very sunny, which feels like that's going to be, depending on how much you use the Orc thrower, probably more of an impact on Harrison than possibly your team. Probably not too worried about an It's Always Sunny weather event, I would assume.
Well, he hasn't got an Orc thrower. This is the discussion that we had. Neither of us was going to throw it anyway.
Yeah.
So it was never a big consideration. I mean, if we would start to get loose and have to throw it, then maybe. But yeah, we had it in our mind all the time. But I don't think any of our offensive plays would involve throwing the ball. So I think, like I said, he broke down my play, and then I was able to crowd his play and then had the time to score. So I think that was the only difference, was that I got on top of him a lot quicker. Whereas he crowded my cage and then I failed the dodge, and then there wasn't really enough time for him to sort of pick up the ball, recover that situation, and score off the back of it. So yeah, it was. I feel it was a lucky win, but it was a really good contest, really enjoyable.
I'm struggling to, in my head. The other team is Rats, isn't it? So this is the punchy matchup of your group. So it's looking early doors, Tom. It's looking like one agile and one bashy team possibly comes out of this group, and one agile, one bashy team goes into the bottom half. If that is the case, I think if Harrison doesn't get out of this group, I still think he's going to be a tricky, possibly contender for that kind of bottom half of the draw.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think looking at what we predicted, you predicted Harrison and Dave. Scott did the same, and in fact, I predicted Harrison and Scott to come out of it. So I think we all kind of predicted. You two predicted two bashy teams going through, and I predicted one agile, one bashy. But both, Dave and Scott have played an absolute blinder with both their teams, and it's just curious to hear what you was about crowding the cages and stuff. Just a little bit of kind of maybe something to think about was. Do you base contact when you say you crowd the cage, or are you getting like one square away to try and make it a little bit more difficult for them to run at you?
Yeah. So what I do is, when I create the cage, all four corners aren't in contact with anything. For me, unless it's a player that's been knocked over, so that's been stunned, that aren't going to get that turn. So what Harrison did was I pushed my cage beyond the line into the middle, and it felt like the next couple of turns I might be able to break away. He then took one of the corners away and then put two players on my ball carrier. So that meant I could only realistically get one off, and I'd have to dodge away. And I think something else caught my eye for the so I'd have to dodge away. So with these sort of things, you half move the cage, you half prepare if you're going to fail the dodge. And yeah, these it's the same with the lizards when they're skinks. I always fail those free up front saves, and they've got the dodge reroll, so there's nothing, it's all on the dice at that point, but you have to mitigate against failing it. But he did the right thing, that putting the two players on the ball carrier then meant that I struggled to sort of get away, and my only option was a dodge. So yeah, fair play to him. But I thought I'd broken his line. I thought I'd done enough. But I was looking at that corner thinking that that's the weak point. And yeah, I think it was another lonely zombie that was guarding that corner that kind of was in trouble. But yeah, normally when I build a cage, I normally none of the sides are touching any of the other players. So all they can do is blitz a corner off. And if they're sensible there, to put two players in. If not, then they just leave the one there, and you just blitz away and move the cage. Just keep going down. Nice and slow and boring.
That's nice.
Before I go on to the next game, I do just want to firstly praise your player names, Dave. And secondly, I get the reference for all of them except for Flimsy Beast.
He's a new one, so I haven't got round to naming him yet.
Okay,
so
fine.
One of the lazy night shifts that I had at work, I sat there and was referencing them. Travis Kelsey's he got his name from his player matches, one of Jane's players. It's exactly the same figure, and funnily enough, we painted them exactly the same. So, but I need to work on this. But I'm Undead in other leagues as well, so I keep forgetting which one's got the football names and which one hasn't. So So I'll tidy that up. I apologise.
I very much enjoy Rio Murderland. I think that very much enjoy it. We will jump on to the next game then, which it's me. Eggfort Albers versus Circus Flemtasia. I'll sort of hand over 20 questions you gents have, but before I do, I think this was probably the game that I've played most where it's been a battle of whose luck is worse for long periods of the game, and Andy's luck was I think in the first half Andy's luck was much worse than mine. In the second half my luck was much worse than his, but the balance just went in his favor just near the end. But I mean, Andy absolutely deserved to win it. Any questions on the?
Well, I saw the first half or first part of this, and you were well on for a first turn touchdown. If I
So
remember
close.
correctly. It was literally you threw your halfling. He picked up the ball, and correct me if I'm wrong, but he failed to go for it on the touchline, didn't he?
No, the ball. So the ball landed. The ball landed in the end zone on the kick, and then the Nurgle failed to pick it up and dropped it in the end zone. And I wasn't planning on doing the throw teammate so soon, but I thought I've got to try this, haven't I? So I got the throw teammate, got the perfect pass to get the completion for the owlbear, got the rush to get into the ball with the square with the ball, and then failed the pickup and failed the reroll. And I think it went out and the crowd chucked it somewhere, and then I think that halfling got very quickly surfed and was out and was done.
I think it would back up to the halfway line again with the crowd throwing it out, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was worth a try. And it so nearly worked. But
how did Acorn do it for you?
Acorn was all right for me. He had in the first half. He was absolutely on fire. He was getting triple pushed all around the place and sidestepping into tricky areas, and he was getting the blocks I needed him to. I think he sort of knocked out a couple of players pretty nicely. He did exactly what I wanted him to do. I kept being able to free up the ball. There kept being gaps mainly because there were some players who were kind of trapped elsewhere on the pitch, so Andy couldn't get in the back to kind of help defend, and kept getting the powers that I needed, but then failing at the key points to either pick up or a rush here, or like just the key bits that would have left me in a nice position are kind of what failed me. And in the second half, if you picture one half of the pitch, I think 3 or 4 turns in a row, I picked the ball up from near my end zone, got the ball up to like the right wing just before the halfway line, tried to either hand off or pass or dodge or rush, dropped the ball, went into the crowd threw it exactly back to where I'd picked it up from. And then I was running back, getting it again, coming back up. And then at least 3 times the ball just kept getting back. And eventually there was a rotter that was just hanging around because he clearly was on side with the crowd and went and picked it up and went in. So, it was a fun game. It was frustrating, but it was fun. I think there was a draw or win there to be had, but it wasn't to be.
Did you try throw teammate in a defensive way?
I did. I tried. I think actually for this one, for the first half, I didn't have my star halfling on because I wasn't expecting to need him. Not long into the second half, he got badly injured because I threw him into the crowd with the ball. So
okay.
The throw teammates, I got that one great throw teammate at the beginning, and there were points where I thought this is the Owlbears game, because he got his completion early on. He then started fouling at the end of the first half. And then there was a point where I thought I could give him the ball and make a run for it. So I thought he was going to be his game, but it wasn't. I think that result means that it's looking like I'm going to need a miracle to finish top 2. But I thought that was going to be the case in this group. So it's going to be fun to watch Nurgle and Khorne and Elves battle it out now in the last few games. So we'll move on from my failure of the week, and Dave will come back to you, who was playing on the pitch next to me, also against Acorn, and it was I enjoyed that Acorn was on both pitches, but he only really turned up on mine. And you dispatched Acorn, or did Acorn dispatch himself pretty quickly?
He dispatched himself, the poor lad. Yeah, I'm sure he must have then ran off onto your pitch, mustn't he? Really? It was the first half of this game was almost like the perfect half for the Undead. Everything went right. I was just getting knockouts left, right, and centre. Acorn went out first half. And I kicked to him as well. So I kicked the ball, it came forward, and he caged on the halfway line. But again, as he was setting up the cage, I could see how to break it down. Then he came with Acorn, and Acorn then got both down against I think it was a block player, and went down and disappeared. So yeah, it's like I was going to take my dice to Vegas. I felt so lucky with that first half. And then he then kicked to me second half. So the game plan was working great. I'd managed to get the ball off him, and then I could do a drive for 8 turns. But I was struggling to keep hold of his gutter runners. They were going everywhere, and the tackler was blitzing and so forth. And there's always the threat. And Craig, the gentleman I was playing, it took a wizard as well, and he hadn't used them all first half. So I was a little bit cautious that this could turn very quickly. He could pop the ball out with a wizard, it could bounce around, a gutter runner could come and pick it up, and then it will be 1-1. And after the first half I didn't want that. So I scored the second one quickly, just to have that buffer. And with about 4 turns remaining, the gutter runners did what they did and was able to score against me. But I felt that by getting that second turn, that second touchdown, the game was won. But it was a shame. He never used his Craig never used his wizard in the end. Because I know a lot of people, when you play with a wizard, they forget. So we got the book out. We marked the page. I put it next to him so that when he went to use the wizard, the references was there. But then after the game, I was like, "What happened? You didn't use the whiz?" And he said he was going to use it to break my cage down if I stalled for the second touchdown. But as I didn't, but I thought, he could have done it on a mummy. That would have been funny, wouldn't it? But that's what I would have done if I was losing 2-0. I'd go, right, where's your best player? Boom, kind of thing. But no, it was an enjoyable game. Looking for the return fixture again, but it'd be nice to be able to get my hands on some of those gutter runners, get rid of them. They're always such a threat. It's horrifying, isn't it? Especially these slow-moving teams.
It's the extra things, especially like wizards. Like I've had I had a tournament recently that I took Skaven to, and I took an APOC in my team build, and three games in a row happily had gutter runners die and just forgot he was there, and it was an absolute waste where I could have had another lineman. So yeah, I feel the pain of ending up not using it. But Tom, is it, when you look at this group, you've got the undead, you've got the orcs, and you've got a kind of surprisingly strong, almost surprisingly bashy goblin team, even though it's all entirely stunty and there's no trolls in there. Is it a surprise that the Skaven team then are struggling a bit against all of that kind of strength, do you think?
Yeah, maybe. It's they've played obviously yourself and the Flamingos, and they got absolutely unfortunately battered against the Goblins in the previous match. It's just, is it also the fact is that sometimes the dice are hot and sometimes they're not really in certain situations. equally, with these two bashy teams, and come to my game, I'm finding it very difficult to get my head around how to get past them. So I think a lot of the teams who've played bashy, who've got bashy teams, have played those teams for a long time and have worked out the best formation and tactics on that side of things. So, and a number of people have played Skaven in the past, and as you mentioned, you no doubt come across them in practically every tournament I've played. I've played against Skaven, so you start to learn their strategy. I don't know whether you think of them as a kind of a bit of a one-trick pony, and you kind of know if you contain the gutter runners, and then things start to fall apart.
Yeah, that's normally where you'd start. I mean, the way that the undead plays, it's just removal. So with tackle pieces and block pieces, you're chasing them around the field. The game that we played, it was so separated that it was difficult for him to be able to put the runners in a place where somebody wouldn't get them. I mean, the mummies weren't going after them, but the tackle pieces were, or the block pieces were. But the fact that he's got 4, I mean, he started with all four on his drive as well. I don't know whether keeping one back. I've it's been years since I played Skaven, so I know how to stop them, and that's just removable figures. But it'd be interesting to see. I mean, I'm not sure. Has Scott and Craig played? I'm not. Let's have a look.
Yes, it was 4-1, 4-1 to the Goblins.
Yeah.
Oh yes, it was 4-1 to the Goblins. But the Skaven team are always dangerous. They should never be underestimated. So the results are going to turn around for him. When he starts getting a few skills on the runners, then they are going to be a dangerous team, and they're still going to be as scary as they are now with no new skills. So I can see his results are going to turn around.
It's you look at his roster. I know he took this team to the Ipswich Classic tournament. I think he ran an ogre in that setup, and I think he did say I think we were talking about during your game, Dave, that he said that he missed the Roger and having that little bit of strength. And looking at his squad as well, he's got the full gutter runners in there, block on one of them. His thrower is Edge 4 at the moment, which is not ideal. I know you've got sure hands for the reroll, but Edge 4 on your throw is not great. So maybe he's taken a bit of a battering. So it could be, as the team kind of warms up, if he can keep some key ones alive, keep those gutter runners and build up to the Roger, that he's then actually got a pretty scary squad he's used to playing for his playoff draw. So
I mean, the claw against the undead and the orc is going to be frightening with the frenzy as well. So it's going to give him a different dynamic to what's happening. As his opponent, you've got other things to look out for now as well.
Yeah, I think he's possibly. I don't know whether he's had to spend money on replacements of things, because he's only got 25 in the treasury. So we'll see how he continues to develop it. But I think, the rats can, if you can keep them alive, you can develop them well. If you do start losing them, then it is, especially because the gutter runners aren't cheap. It is painful. We will jump on to the next game. And Tom, we're going over to you. We're going over to Clueless Crusaders versus Agartha Mewers. 2-1 for the Norse team in this one. The group is still looking quite tight, and you and Jack are still looking relatively comfortable at the top of it at the moment. How did this one kind of settle for you?
Yeah, I think the Norse are a bit of one of my bogey teams. I've yet to kind of work them out on how to beat them, really, as the score tells you. And equally, Jack plays this Norse team very well. He admitted at the beginning that he'd been playing this team solidly for like a good couple of months to kind of get his head around them. So it was a tough game. And equally, my dice were getting through armor, but with that thick skull that the Norse team have, all I was getting was just stuns. So they were staying on the pitch. So then I tried. So he very quickly went one touchdown up against me. I then unfortunately started to get injuries, but I had to use a few players as like cannon fodder to get in the way to score my touchdown with my catcher. I did a lot of dodging through and managed to put out quite a wide cage around him, so that I got that touchdown by the skin of my teeth, to be honest. It was literally to go for it at the end of my turn 8 before the second half. Then straight away, my thrower gets injured in the second half. So I'm now 2 players down. But by that time, I played for most of the game with only 9 players, and Jack had a full set. And I realized that once a team like Norse have got the numerical advantage, it's very, very difficult to kind of get past them and get through them. Even with, with dodge on my catchers, it's still a 3 up to dodge through. And I was burning all my re-rolls as well. It was a very hard fought game, but hats off to Jack. He played fantastically.
Because the humans are a good passing catching team, and with your diving catch on your catcher now makes you've now got, with 1 less pace, a similar throwing catching setup to a Skaven thrower and a gutter runner, because that diving catch gives you the benefit there. So they are a great team to do it. Would it be fair to say that your bad luck is coming this season in the ability to hold on to a thrower for more than 1 game? Because your first game, I think you got them stat busted, and then your replacement thrower seems to have now be out for the next game as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so my first throw got stat busted on pass. So I was like, I'm getting rid of that straight away. And yeah, you're quite right. And I just can't seem to keep players on the pitch. That's the problem.
I mean, the Norse team are racking up skill points quite nicely. They've had some good games. A Berserker with Edge 4, maybe not ideal, but not the worst. The Valkyries are starting to look scary with dodge and block on one and sure hands on another. So they're starting to look like a good sort of dangerous pair. Dave, I'm looking at the Norse team. No Yeti, no pigs in that lineup, but I guess their linemen with thick skull and block are kind of pretty decent to just fill the team with.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like, you look at the touchdown account for the Valkyrie. He's got his chosen ball carrier there. The sure hands was a random, so that might not be down the plan, but that's still not going to be a bad thing. But yeah, it seems like they've got everything that they need without having any pigs or the Yeti. I mean, the Norse linemen with the fixed skull are to a certain extent quite robust, but with block across the board, it's like Tom said, as soon as they get the numerical advantage, they're just going to keep pressing at home. You'll have to pick your fights with them and who to take out, but yeah, it looks like that they then gain the control because of it. So, but no, it looks like it's coming along nicely. I don't know whether he will get rid of the Berserker. Agility 4 probably doesn't care about that. He's probably got better things to do than mess around with the ball. So yeah, looks like he's going good guns with them.
I guess it looks like the money is in the treasury to replace that Berserker, but whether a Yeti is on the cards, because there's 100,000 sat there in the treasury that is not currently being spent on anything. So makes you think it's likely, possibly saving up for a Yeti there.
Yeah.
Tom, that's so it's 1 win, 1 loss for you so far at the beginning of the season. Jack is on good form, on a good run, and has been taught the game by last year's 1st place, 3rd place, and 4th place coaches. Will you take 4 wins from 6 and 2 losses to Jack and finishing 2nd in this group quite nicely, or is this a fixture that ideally, obviously, you wanted the win, but are you looking at points elsewhere in the group?
No, I take all the wins I can get, to be honest. I've equaled my record of a win in a league in the whole of a season. So I'm on for doubling my win rate if I win next couple of games, or at least one of the games coming up. I did luckily get enough money to buy my halfling, so I've got a full set now. I only need to use one journeyman in the next game. So I was interested to see on your game when you threw your halfling how effective it was, and equally I've been reading up, and I believe you can throw halflings even if they're stunned. So
yes,
that could be quite useful on the defense as well against the Norse, which I may actually resort to having to do.
It's great. It's just like throwing beanbags. It doesn't matter whether they can just land in a pile somewhere, and what will be will be. Just don't get addicted to it. That's my problem with Throw Teammate. I'm a little bit too hooked, and I forget that there's other things. Speaking of Throw Teammate, we will go to our Stunty versus Stunty matchup that we had this week. A matchup that, from the moment the draw was done, we were all waiting to see this happen. We've got Gnomes versus Gnomes. It seems when we've got multiple of one race in the league, we can't help but stick them in the same group and let them fight it out. So an interesting matchup then, and we're still learning a lot about the gnome team. So sort of Gnomes versus Gnomes is a very kind of interesting one to see how it goes down. This one ended surprisingly with a win to the Gnomes, and a win to Dave, who's continuing his stunty winning run and showing that stunties are getting some good results here. A touchdown with a fox coming on turn 16, and a touchdown on the fox coming on turn 8 by the looks of it. So two sort of end of game plays there. It was this game was, I think we were all playing at the same time, so this one was also happening in the shop. A shout out to Dave's tree, who is just entirely made of sprues, and I absolutely love. The unfortunate thing when you look at Dave's team, Dave, is both trees have pile driver, which isn't really what you want.
Yeah.
No,
So
they're not going to. You wouldn't want to be putting them down, because it's going to take a while to get them back up again, isn't it? So I know Dave wasn't happy when he rolled them, but there you go. That's the nature of the game, isn't it?
I think maybe they just now built for turn 16 fouls at the end of the game to get one in.
Yeah.
Tom, you were playing next to this one,
yeah.
and it was exactly what you wanted from Gnomes versus Gnomes.
Yeah, it was absolute chaos. To the fact that the Sir Honkington Folly weren't even built 10 minutes before the game. So they were being built on site, so to speak. And the realization that some of the gnomes have overly complicated things to glue together was evident at the end of it. Apparently the illusionists just have too many irrelevant things to glue together. Why they have those so many things need to be glued together, God only knows. But at one point, I do believe that on the pitch there was only one tree man standing. Everything else was either in the dugout or flat on its face. So I have to say, for the rematch of this, we're going to have to stream it, because it was comical just to watch things just falling about. The fact that these gnomes don't have dodge, I don't believe, is some of them don't. I think it's the illusionists were going all over the place, moving around, but not as effective as you might think they were. I think also the fact is, once you got the foxes killed or knocked out or thrown off, things start to rapidly slow down for a gnome team. So it was just interesting, just keeping an eye out on the pitch next to me, seeing this craziness happen.
I think there was one stage, wasn't there, where everybody was on the deck because there's so much wrestle going around. They're just dragging each other down, and then obviously next time with the jump up, they're all off again.
I guess that's great, isn't it? That you can the chances of you ending your turn and every single player's on the floor are quite high because you've got the wrestle for the both down. Yeah, I mean, it sounded like it. Yeah, it did sound like it was just a phenomenal game happening. I think there was some attempted throw teammates. There is a tree man completion on turn 8, so I wonder whether there was a tree man chucking a gnome across the field in that instance. Dave has had a good start then. He's got 2-0 win here and the extra bonus point for the casualties, 5 casualties coming from this one. He got a win against the Orcs in the last one. I think it feels to me like this group is going to be decided, and I know that there's a game coming up this week where Rich is yet to play, and we've seen the destruction that Rich and his Riotous Rounds can cause. And I think we were all assuming a bloodbath when we get Gnomes versus Chaos at some point. Do we think that for these Gnomes, it's going to be a case of survive that bashy game, survive Nanny, and then we can pick up against each other? Is that right, or do you think that's probably not the right mindset to go into it with?
I think they've got a fair bit of survivability. I mean, there's only one tackle. I mean, Horns with an assist is going to give them 3 dice, but then the wrestle, they're just going to throw people down. It's going to be interesting to see how they will fare against a team like the Rams, and with players like Nanny, because claws means nothing, doesn't it? Really, you know, against a gnome team, maybe the trees will be upset about that. So it will be interesting to see how Dave plays it. I mean, he's on a roll with them. If he can stop rolling up pile driver on randoms, then he might be doing a little bit better. But maybe he'll be able to get the armbar working on the other tree. But it's going to be a really interesting game. It's going to be really, really keen to see whether Rich does tear into them and make a difference.
Yeah, he will. And equally, there is 230k of inducement money up for grabs for this. 235, should I say. So you could take something like the Mighty Zug on that kind of level. You could take some really interesting star players to give you a little bit more of a nuisance for you.
Yeah.
And Rodney I've seen Rodney work as far as the star player goes, and he does give you an option to kind of switch the play quite nicely if you need to get to a different gnome as well.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
We've got another gnome game which we will get to later, which we can see how gnomes can maybe be on the end of some casualties. So we'll come to that a bit later on. First, we're going to go to the rematch of Nurgle versus Old World Alliance. In the first game between these two, Hellions started their season with a 3-0 win quite comfortably. But in this one, the Nurgle team have very much found their fetid feet, it seems, and have managed to turn it around and take a 1-0 win with 3 casualties. So taking 5 points away from this, not letting those Hellions sort of run away with this division, giving them a bit of a challenge. And it has, if you look back at previous seasons, Dave, it is quite rare that we see Scott losing in the group stage because he generally doesn't do it that often. So a good performance by the Nurgle.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we get any feedback on the chat for this one, because like he said, it's traditionally Scott's normally quite a savvy player with the way that he plays during the league. He scored against me. Well done, Scott. And obviously playing Nurgle last season, you'd think that he'd understand all of the tricks that they've got in their bag. Could this be a case of the Old World Alliance showing how bad of a team that they really are when it comes to the crunch? You never know. Sometimes the game's gonna pit against you, and you're never gonna win. But no, it's nice to see you know, with the Scott was running away a little bit with the league with the bonus points, so it's nice to see that that the gap's starting to get closed between him and the other members of the group. So it'll be interesting to see where this one goes.
It was a good start from the Nurgle. A casualty very early on to take the human catcher out for the next game. Rot spawn casualties and badly hurts the tree man. And then they foul their way through before Wart gets a touchdown. It feels like from tour play that they were in control, sort of somewhat. Scott saying in the chat, Luke played great. He's sort of the learning curve he's on. He's definitely, even though we're not that many games in, and I'm already looking at him as like most improved player from game one through to where he is now. So, you know, it's really, really impressive to see. Tom, the humans in the old world are not as good as humans. Which always just annoys me to no end. Scott will have not liked losing that star catcher in this game.
No, I don't think he would have. No. So, yeah, because that's got block and sidestep on it as well, hasn't it? If I'm correct.
It's a nasty looking catcher at this point.
Yeah.
It's got block sidestep, and it's currently sat on 5 SPP, working towards another one.
Yeah, you probably know better than anyone around about the old Royal Lions. It just seems that they've just got lots of different players, but with worse stats. And I don't know how much the animosity played into this game or not, because that's something I often found when I was playing with my orcs, especially with the blitzes on that side of animosity, when you want to move the ball around quickly. I suppose with the fact that he's playing against Nurgle, he didn't really need to rush around that much because of, you know, they're not very quick themselves. But it seems to have been almost, you could say, it started to get a bit desperate at the end of the beginning of the second half, with lots of fouls going on and happening at that point as well. But yeah, well done to him.
Dave, question for you, because we were talking about this. Last week in the week. I feel like Old World Alliance are broken. Not good, not broken, overpowered, broken rubbish. But in April, they were the second highest team in the meta for win rate. So that to me doesn't feel right. Is there something I'm missing?
It would seem so. You're right. I mean, the thrower throws on a 3-up, not a 2-up. The dwarf blitz hasn't got the dwarf lineman hasn't got tackle. It just seems like, I mean, I've played them once and lost to them once with the lizards way back when. So maybe there is a trick to this that we're all missing. I mean, they don't look like they're a passing team. You can't really stack up on the decent players. You can't overload on the human blitz or so forth. So it would be interesting to see how other people are playing them and how that meta's got so high. Maybe it's more to do with the skill package they use. Maybe they don't pass the ball, so animosity is not a problem. But then I don't hear many people moaning about animosity anyway with this sort of a team. It just seems like, I think as a league we're missing the point with them. But it'd be interesting to see how other people are playing them.
Yeah, would you consider using both a tree man and an ogre, and have a little bit of a bashy front line, and then have the humans sit behind them and kind of try and knock out a few players early on, and then try and dart around the sides? Or
I'm trying to only take one or the other, can't you? Tree or ogre, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the tree man seems a little bit more solid with the strong arm for the throw teammate, because that one-turn touchdown always will come up every now and then and get you out of trouble. So the tree man does seem like a better option. But no, it'd be interesting to see. Maybe I'll start giving these guys a go and see if we can work out where the win is. Maybe get Elliot to use them.
Let's give him to Elliot. We'll let him figure it out.
Would you think that there are hybrid bashy team or agile team? What camp would you put them in?
Maybe it's a case of that they're getting a lot of star player love. Maybe Griff is the boy for them. Maybe they're loading up on the human lineman, maybe a thrower and Griff. Maybe that might be the way forward in a couple of re-rolls. I mean, traditionally humans have been the kind of one size fits all team that they don't do anything good, but they do everything else mediocre. So I still think, like Chris, that they're a passing team with that throw with the 2 up and a catch with catch movement 8. It seems like that they've got a lot in their locker for that sort of play. Um, but it will be interesting to see how the old world Lions teams get on this year. It will be interesting to see. It'll be good to see how they do.
Well, well done to Luke. A really good turnaround, doing really well this season, sort of in his games. Unfortunately, didn't do as well in his next game, which was a 1-0 loss to the Gnomes in this group, to the Big Critters. Does take away the bonus point for casualty, so getting the bonus points there, which is always good, which I feel is going to be handy in this group to get them. But the Gnomes getting a good start to the season here with a 1-0 win. Touchdown looks like it's coming sort of midway to or the end, possibly of the second half, from the Fox. I don't think any Gnomes have scored yet. I don't think any. I think it's just been Foxes who are scoring for this team, which I think you would expect based on the skills that they've got within the team. So I think you would expect that to be the case. Inducements coming in. We've got a blizzard in this one, and we've got mascots coming in for extra rerolls for the Gnomes. Tom, it's I think the Gnomes in this group, they're coming up against 2 Nurgle teams, and they're coming up against Old World Alliance. And the Nurgle team is very much a anti-passing team. Like, if you're a passing team, they're built to make that more difficult for you. So probably not. It's maybe somewhat of a surprise that there does seem to be, there is a completion in there somewhere. I guess, do you just stay away from the Nurgle if you're the Gnomes? Do you just try not to get sort of wrapped up in any tentacles or anything else?
Yeah, I would assume so. I suppose I wonder whether if you're using that wrestle to some advantage, because some of these teams like Nurgle are already quite slow, so you knock them down, even if it's against your player, you can jump up and run away on movement 5, and most of their players are like movement 4 or 5, aren't they, on the Nurgle side of things? So maybe that's a tactic. It does seem to be one of those games where it started off with a lot of injuries happening straight away. So on turn 5, there was an injury on a rotter, and then on turn 7, there was an injury on a lineman as well. So it looks like it was one of those games where it could have gone either way very early on. But then, as you say, the Fox, to me, seems to be their gutter runner. It will always score. But I wonder how effective a gnome team will be if you take out one or even both of the Foxes.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see whether we do get any gnome scoring from any of the teams, and I imagine that a gnome will score because the Foxes are out of action. That feels like what it's going to be. Dave, does that kind of make the Gnomes a bit of a one-trick kind of stunty team because you're so reliant on those Foxes to get them to ball and to make the breakthrough?
I think it doesn't. I think to a certain extent they've got their A plan, and that's give it to the Fox. But it seems like that they've got a lot of other options as well. The sidestep is gonna keep them going in the right direction. Throw teammate is always an option as well. So I think when we see people start to break down the Foxes, then you might see some more Gnomes scoring. But I think while it's working, I think that they might not have any need to change it at the moment. it seems to be working for them because, like, all we ever do seem to see is Fox's scoring. But it's interesting because Luke's Rotspawn took the MVP for that, and then he's put guard on there, so it looks like Luke is definitely building a team here. But with the big critters, it's shown that the tree man's not available for the next game, but I can't quite work out why.
We'll see why
the...
when we look at his next game.
Okay, I'm too far behind. Right, okay, makes sense.
So we'll cover that then, because there's very much a good news, bad news week for the big critters when it comes to the
okay,
games.
yeah, I can see, I can see the next game coming up. I'll shut up.
But Luke is in the chat and saying that the illusionists feel like the strongest part of the team, being able to reposition on block, making you having to think more through your blitz and where you're blitzing from. I found this. So I played gnomes in the Ipswich Classic tournament, and it wasn't too much of a problem for me because I was playing lizards and the illusionist was moving to turn a 3 dice into a 2 dice rather than a 2 dice into 1 or anything else like that. So it wasn't sort of too bad. But I think Luke's got a point there that it does maybe feel like once you kind of nail how to position yourself so that you can make that illusionist really mess people up and really ruin people's plans, because I think you only have to forget that it can do it once and you can get thrown right out of position, or just allow that illusionist a path forward, because it's basically free movement for them. So they do feel like a very strong, that trickster when used right, I feel like can be very frustrating.
Yeah, well, I mean, you think if you base up a corner of a cage and then they push you, you can then move within that cage, can't you? So there is a lot. I know when I played early at the Ipswich Classic, I forgot about the illusionist, and then when he said about it, it completely changed the plan for that play. So yeah, that does seem like that. But I think that's how Workshop wants to be played, isn't it? They want to have that kind of that fun tier 3. What's going to happen next? Nobody knows. Sort of feel to them, and they are definitely fitting that vibe, aren't they?
Well, I'm not going to go to the next game. I think we'll do the good news, bad news, and we'll go to. I'm going to jump one game forward to cover what possibly is one of the more bizarre games that we've had in the league. I spoke to Scott today because I had to find out what actually happened in this one, and the long of short of it is, over the space of 4 turns, the Old World team absolutely battered these gnomes, absolutely battered them. And in a few different ways, you've got a casualty early on by the Troll Slayer. A badly hurt gnome, which I think was the result of, I think there were crowd surfs where some gnomes got taken out through crowd surfs. So they weren't all from the Hellions. There were the crowd got involved as well. If you can't see it on here, there were many knockouts. And I think by the time we got towards turn 4 here, most of the players were either stunned on the floor or they were on the bench, either not coming back or knocked out. There were not many players left for the gnomes on the pitch. And and John, the gnome coach, was trying to decide whether, for the kind of safety of the team, was it worth continuing and taking more of a beating as it went on. Scott was in a very comfortable position, stalled and protected up, didn't need to worry. Trees were spending time on the floor, so the ability for that tree to get up to throw anyone close was tricky. Throwable players nearby, because the Beastmen aren't throwable. They don't have right stuff. Most throwable players were either off the pitch or stunned or knocked out, whatever. So it was, it was just all of the armor rolls went well for the Old World Alliance, and nothing was going well for the gnomes, and it was just probably the quickest domination that we've probably seen. So John decided to concede on turn 4 and protect the players that he had left, so that he wasn't just entirely wiped out before the next game. The tree man, one of his tree men is missed next game. One of his linemen is missed next game. He does still have 2 foxes, one of which is 3 SPP. But yeah, a game that didn't last. It seems to think it lasted 6.5 hours. It didn't. Ignore the tour play timings on it. But yeah, the decision that he wanted to protect the side, and it just wasn't going to go his way. So I don't think I've ever been in that position so early on, and I think to be in that position so early on is must be an image of exactly how bad this game was going.
Yeah, it must have been quite. It's one of those ones where you get to that point and you feel that there's going to be no positive outcome for yourself. You know, you can't. You're just going to continue to sustain losses on your side. And I was about to ask, so that's no doubt why there's only one side of MVP. So he clearly didn't get MVP because he conceded. Is that how it works? Yeah.
Yeah. If you choose to concede rather than being forced to, then you don't get MVP, and you also don't get any winnings. If you are forced to concede because you can't field 3 players on the line, then in that scenario, I think you do get your share of things, because you don't have a choice. You have to concede. But if it's your choice, you forfeit everything. So yeah, no winnings. And not only do you get no winnings, 100% of the winnings go to your opponent. So that's why Hellions have taken away 100,000 gold from this.
Okay. Okay. So it's not a happy game there by the sounds of things for the big critters.
And it's tricky because he showed in the previous, he beat Luke in the previous game. So there'll be an element of, we know Scott is a very experienced coach and will know sort of how to play and what to do. John may be a little bit less recent experience on it. So there's going to be an element of that. But there's also he's shown he can win in this league, and he won against Luke, who beat Scott. So the win is there. Dave, would you have played at least given it until the half before making this call? It feels like a very early call to make. Like, I wasn't there. I don't know exactly how bad it was, but it does feel like a very early time to kind of pull that trigger.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes if your heart's not in it, then maybe that is the best course of action. But you don't know with I think he was starting with 14 players. Is there 14 on his roster? Yeah. So there seemed like there might have been potential for it to turn around. I mean, sometimes the first half can go completely against you, and you're really down in the dumps, and then the second half almost feels like a completely different game. So I think the handing the winnings over and the MVP and so forth will affect the teams going forward. So for that reason, I probably wouldn't have done that. But I would have sat there and been grumpy as hell anyway, and not have been a nice opponent to play against. But yeah, I think for the development of the team, and you don't know, you might get the lucky casualty here, there, or you could then start being spiteful and trying to take out the easy options on their team to try and build up the SP, knowing that you're not going to win the game. So it is a difficult call. I mean, we're all very different. I suppose he would probably say that you never know what was going to happen for the second half. He could lose that many amount of players and get a few K killed and so forth. So it might have been the right decision in hindsight. But just seeing the 0 for the winnings is a bit heartbreaking for him, I'd imagine.
Yeah, but listening in chat, Scott saying that the fouling the tree to casualty was the straw that broke John. Although he's a good coach, and hope he comes back strong. So yeah.
I mean, we want to see the most entertaining games possible, and there is entertainment in seeing someone get entirely battered. You never want someone to get so battered they have to concede so soon, but clearly, things were going very well for Scott. So well done. There's an element of the dice work for you, and there's an element of you still have to do the right things to roll the right dice. So well done to him, and I'm sure we'll see these gnomes cropping up and causing some chaos. And we might look back at this at the end of the group stage and say that protecting those players was absolutely key for the next fixture. So we'll see how that comes. We will jump on to our next game then. I went forward too many, so now I've got to come back and I've got to go to this one. A result that surprised me somewhat when I saw it had finished, and that's to take nothing away from another solid stunty performance from Justin, but a 2-0 win for the Halflings over Elliot's Necromantic Horror team. So Elliot, a coach that we've learned that you can't write off, possibly still getting used to the change from necromantic, from dwarf to necromantic. But Justin also using his inducement money that he had there to good measure. Cindy and Rumbelow coming in. Halfling Master Chef. I know that Justin's in the chat. It'll be interesting to hear how many rerolls Elliot had for the game. Gave him no rerolls in the first half and only one in the second. So doing a job there. And then it looks like things just start, casualty for the tree man, casualty for Rumbelow, stat bust on a hefty. Don't know how terrifying that's going to be. It looked like casualties were pretty even in the first half, actually, scrolling through. And then the trees getting more and more casualties. But the halflings nabbing it at the end. Tom, stunty teams are doing well this season. They just are. We're just having some really strong stunty performances.
Yeah, I think it seemed to be a bit interesting that they've got quite a number of stunty teams. We've got also quite a variety of them. Yes, we've got quite a lot of gnomes, but we've got the halflings in here. We've got ogres. We've got the goblins as well. So they all seem to be holding their own, especially with the scoring as well. I've often thought of them as the kind of the novelty teams that are always in tier 3 that people just bring along for fun. But clearly, you can see that if they're in the right situation, they can be very, very dangerous.
And I think the claws on the werewolves aren't going to be doing a lot, like we said before earlier for the gnomes. It's a similar situation here, other than the trees, so they're going to be doing much here. Dave, Justin decided to bring halflings this season to change it up a little bit, put the elves to one side, and it seems to be sort of he's getting some good results.
Yeah, well, I'll have to have a word with him. I want to take halflings to a tournament in the summer, but I think it'd be nice if Torplay told us how many rerolls that Master Chef takes. I know that Justin's put that in there, but that does have such a big effect on the team. We talked about last week about having block on there so that you can kind of burn through those both down dice rolls for your block dice. So, and Justin was saying as well that I think Elliot had an instant turnover. So taking those rerolls away do knock you off your balance. But it looks like he saved Cindy till the second half, which is quite an interesting play, which he used for her. But again, when the game's going with you, it's going with you, isn't it? And a lot of teams can score quite quickly. A failed pickup deep in the half, within 2 turns, you can find yourself 1-0 down. So, whether the scoreline reflects the actual game that happened would be interesting to see in the chat. Let's see what Justin's put. I think a little once things went against him. Yeah. So it seems like the 2-0 might be a little bit inflated, that Elliot lost his way once he started to lose a few of the players. And I know the way you play halflings is to foul early and foul often. So it seems that's what Justin's done with them, and it's paid off for him.
Yeah, it's 6 casualties for the halflings compared to 2 for the necromantic horror. I mean, the tree man has put a shift in by the looks of it. Clearly spurred from a tree man touchdown last week, We've got 1, 2 casualties for tree men, 3 casualties for over the 2 tree men this week. So racking up the SPP there. And looks like being somewhat patient as well on what he's going to do with that SPP on those tree men. 8 on one, 7 on another, and no skills at the moment have been kind of given there. So sort of biding his time there. What are we going to say to Elliot here then? He started the season with a new team. He's got 1 win, 1 draw, 1 loss so far in his first 3 games. So 50% record with the new team in the first 3 games. Probably learned a lot in those 3 games on how this tree man, how this necromantic team play. Tom, I mean, I think Elliot, we know he can kind of do things and play very, very strong Blood Bowl. He's doing something different here. Do we think he's got enough behind him to, if he can't overcome? I mean, I still think like it's probably strong. Can he get out of this group still with the teams he's got to face?
I don't think he needs any advice from me. He's a very, very good player. Yes, he's got dwarfs and Skaven in the same group as himself, so he's still got a good chance of getting through there. You know, I don't know how many times he's played with Necromantic Horror before bringing them in. I know that this was a last minute swap because he was looking to bring in gnomes, but he's very, very, he thinks about the game, and I think there did seem to be a lot of hard play, because let's not mess around here. Justin's also a very, very good player, both very experienced, know tactics, know all their tricks and stuff like that. So I think this is not him being down and out. This is just he's gonna realign himself, get back in the game, and he'll play a blinder at the next one.
Justin saying he said he arranged his game against Jamie as soon as he knew that one of Jamie's players was stat busted. So I wonder whether Elliot's just keeping an eye on other fixtures and trying to line up his games in the best possible way. But I think this group could be tight. I think all of the games look like they could sort of swing either way depending on what happens. So we'll have a look at the table at the end and see how we think that's going to go. And we're on to our last game of the week. And it is the Atomic Cherry Bombs versus the Lustrian Legends. A game which, if Scott's still in the chat, I'm sure he will tell us, I think did not really go his way for many reasons. It doesn't sound like this game is filling him with much elf fun. Up against Tom, who we know is very strong. And these two have played each other before, I believe twice last season. I think they were in the same group there. So they will have sort of faced off against each other already, but with new teams here. Dave, this is an interesting matchup on paper because you've got two teams you've got elves with Edge 2 versus Amazons who feel like Edge 3 elves with dodge. So it's sort of there's some similarities to be drawn between them, and both pretty squishy. So did you think that it's probably the Amazons have the edge here, or who do you think kind of on paper which team has the edge?
Well, traditionally it would look like the Amazons have got the edge on this. Just with the dodge gives them a little bit more survivability early on in the league with staying upright. But again, maybe there was something in the water last week. So there was a dead injury early on, or dead for the Wood Elves. So maybe this is a little bit of a morale loss. You lose a player early on, you get that dead, and then you can see that the Amazons started throwing the ball around like elves, and went on to win the game. So it's difficult because I mean with Woodies, you're going to try and dodge away. You're trying to keep them safe on defense, and I think the Amazons would play into that and would take the space. They've got the movements to get down the field as well. They've got the strength for increase now as well, so that they can kind of almost pinpoint the players that they want. So on paper, I would say that the Amazons would have the advantage in this one.
It looks in the chat like Tom killed one elf, KO'd 3, and the fouls were coming in on this one. It looks like Tom saying only fouled because they got bribes on kickoff, so it was worth sort of fouling until you used the bribe up. So yeah, the kickoff event may be changing the way that they wanted to play there. And it was 0-0 at half time by the looks of it as well. Scott in the chat saying Tom just beat me down in the second half. So maybe an element of attrition to Tom coming into this one.
Yeah, he put in a chat with us on the weekend that he says when your war dancer fouls a 2+ dodge, your catcher fouls a 2+ pickup twice, and all you get on blocks or pushes, it's always a long day. So clearly there was not a good amount of things there. I even think he actually had to use re-rolls to pick up the ball with Wood Elves. So it really wasn't the best of games for Scott, unfortunately. But well done to Tom, who clearly took it to him and gave him a bit of a bloody nose.
Tom's got a tough group here: elves, Amazons, and elves, humans, and lizards. And he's got a 2-0 win here. He beat the lizards 3-2. Humans 2-1. All the games are feeling pretty tight in this one. Tom seems to be on the right side of these tight results so far. Looking at the group as a whole, Dave, do you think the Amazons probably... I mean, I would look at the group and I would think the lizards are going to be in that top 2 on the kind of the benefits that they have against the teams that are there. Are the Amazons... Would you expect them to be possibly second or first here?
Well, it looks like the Amazons are going to take the group at this moment. They've only got 3 more games left, so it looks like they're going to be a rack up points. It's going to be interesting to score points off the others to take that second place. It does look like the Lizardman team would have the advantage over the other 2, but again, you never know. And also, what Tom might decide to try to skill up a few players that he wouldn't normally. He might try a few different tactics once he realizes that he's through on the league. So it might be a case of that there might be a few not surprise results, if you see what I mean. He might be able to feel that he's comfortable and try something a little bit different. So I think there's still going to be a bit of a swing, and it doesn't seem that there's many bonus points in this group, like you said.
We may or may not have dropped off there on the stream. I'm getting all sorts of error messages on my side, but it does now say we're connected. So if we did disappear, then I think then apologies, and we'll just have a slightly disjointed end to this one. Yeah, people in the chat are saying, "Wait, it ended." So yes, we'll keep going, and we'll connect these 2 up. I'll do some editing magic and make it look like nothing ever happened. That was our last game then. Looking at the tables, we'll run through the tables. Orchidas group, that win puts the Argarth and Mewers comfortably at the top there. Tom's still sitting in second with no points yet for Jane or Leanne. Bloodwiser, Hellions looking pretty comfortable at the top, but Fetid Feet are now nicely behind them and keeping them honest. John and Nick will be looking to try and get some points. More points to make their way up. Yes, hello, Stephen. Chaos Cola, T-Belly Trudgers looking good at the top of this group, but it looks tight after that. 5 points for the Elves, 5 points for the Necromantic Horror. Graham still only on the 1 point there, but you feel like there could be something there for him to do. McMurtry's Draystone Defenders sitting at the top of there with 2 wins from 2. Definitely looking like the team to beat at the moment in that group, but we will be watching Rich as he plays his first game this week. Nesquig, no games happened in this group this week, so Robert and James still tied at the top there with John sitting on 3rd. I believe John and the Golden Oldies play at some point this week, so we'll see who comes out on top there. Flamingos, 9 points at the top of that group. Dave, just behind them on 8. The 2 teams winning in that group sitting in 1st and 2nd with a nice buffer already with 2 games to go. So we'll see whether Harrison or the Rats can do anything there. Spike Magazine, Doombringers on 12, Circus on 8, Knights on 7. Still very tight between those 3. I think any of those 3 could finish in those top 2 positions. I will watch happily from the bottom. And in Popcorn, Lustrian Legends, 11 points from 3 games is looking pretty comfortable. I think Sam's Lizards will be trying to keep up with them, and they've sat there in 2nd. Wood Elves on 3 points in 3rd, having played an extra game. I still think a lot to play for in that group, so we'll see what happens there. The other thing I will look at before we do our Player of the Week stuff is I will just scroll down, because I feel like with the way it's going, we do need to keep a little track on the best stunty. So Flamingos currently with a win rate of 1, just above win ratio of 1, just above Dave and OTFC, who also both have 1. So there must be a touchdown difference, I think, being taken into account there. T-Belly Trudgers 0.67, and then the Big Critters on 5. So we'll keep an eye on that as the weeks go on to see who comes out as the best stunty team. So then, Player of the Week. I think it's tricky to pick this week. I think there's been lots of strong team performances. I don't know if I could necessarily pick out a particularly sort of a particular single player performance. But what do you guys think?
Well, I don't know if we can vote for our own players, but I'm going to. So the John Bones, the skeleton who caught the ball and so kindly managed to drag his carcass into the end zone carrying the ball. I wouldn't normally score with a skeleton; they wouldn't be anywhere near the ball. So for me, he's a player that sort of stands out on the games that I've played. But it's difficult this week. We haven't got 3 men scoring goals, touchdowns, or a lot of the games we're not getting like hat tricks or braces from anybody as well. So I think it's going to be difficult to kind of stand out.
I think I'm willing to listen to John Bones, and I think I'll pick between John Bones and Tim Burr, because Tim Burr had a strong game with some strong casualties, and a completion in that game for the 2-0 win for the Halflings. So I think I'm going to go Tim Burr is my vote for this week. Tom?
I'm going to go for Tails with the Draystone Defenders, because not only did he score, or did they score the 2 touchdowns, but they also got an injury in there as well. So that's quite impressive, because again, I do think that those Foxers are the targets, and to use them to actually cause injuries as well is quite ballsy. Okay, it's against other gnomes, but I'll give it to Tails.
I mean, I think that if we're then going for a bounty of the week, I mean, you've just put a pretty good case together for why Tails should be the bounty of the week, with 2 touchdowns and a casualty.
They do now have safe pair of hands on a fox, which I don't think is the best thing.
Yeah. No. I think I voted for Tails last week just because it was a round peg for a round hole, but it does seem like he's sticking his head above the parapet. So I think a bounty would be interesting for him.
Cool. bounty of the week then sounds like it is going on to that fox, the first fox to get a bounty. So that's a nice easy one to claim if anyone wants to try and claim that one. Stephen, put your head down, mate. I'm on the camera. Finally, then it's a game of the week. Which game do we think was the standout fixture? Less high scoring ones, lots of 1-0s, 2-0s, it wasn't quite the score fest that we had last week, but some intriguing fixtures in there. I think I'm going to put my game of the week, and I think it is close. I think all of them had some standout moments. It's either Gnome on Gnome, or it is possibly Luke's win against Scott. And I think I'm going to put game of the week as, for me, I'm going to go the Fetid Feet versus the Feudal Hellions, because I think it's always nice when you start to see the reverse fixtures and seeing Luke get battered 3-0 by Scott, and then in a short space of time improve his game and get to the point where he can get a 1-0 win. I think is always nice to see. So that's going to be where my vote is. But what are you guys thinking?
I'm going to go with the Gnomes, because it just was hilarious. The fact that people kept on coming over and just trying to work out why every player was on the floor and who was where and where was who. It was a complete carnage. So I think I'll go for that game.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go for Gnomes as well. I was the same as yourself, Chris, thinking about the two, but for me, glancing over and seeing all of the miniatures on the deck, and I think Dave and the other gentleman's name, who I can't remember, had a lot of fun playing the game as well. And I was there when he was for the game, laughing at him. But yeah, it does seem more of a classic sort of Blood Bowl matchup. And sometimes these mirror matches can be boring, but I think this highlights how much fun that Gnomes can be to play.
Cool. So it sounds like then game of the week looks like it is going to the Gnomes versus Gnomes. So well done to both of those coaches. That's all our games. That's everything that we've gone through for the week. Lots of fixtures coming up over the next week. We'll look to bring as many of them to you live as possible. We will be back next week for more rounding up of things. Thank you to Tom and to Dave for your contributions this week. Once again, thank you very much for joining me. That's us done. Thank you everyone for watching. Apologies for a little blip in the middle. We'll sort that out in the edit. When you watch it on YouTube, you won't even notice. It'll be like nothing's happened. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you next time for the next roundup.